Welcome back. We are back to our national rundown today. And we're actually not going to go into too many topics. In fact, we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into our good friend, the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. You see, Pete's been dominating the headlines recently, and not for good reasons. Um, he started out controversially uh, between his behavior, his apparently his drunken behavior on camera when he was working for Fox, and allegations of misconduct in his life. We're not really going to get into that, or we're not going to get into that at all. But just to mention, he started out on shaky ground, and that ground is only getting shakier by the day. Well, it all starts with Tim Waltz and that app called Signal. So, as you know, Tim Waltz had included a bunch of people in that app talking about the Houthi strike on March 15th, and that chat group happens to include a journalist from The Atlantic. This was obviously a mistake, and it was very embarrassing for Tim and the administration. Well, it turns out that Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, used that very same app to talk to other people about that same strike against the Houthis. These people included his brother, his wife, and his lawyer. Now, having his brother and his lawyer in there seems pretty bad, but it turns out actually that both his brother and his lawyer have official positions with the Department of Defense and do serve as advisors to him. So it's really not that crazy that he would have them in part of this group. His wife, on the other hand, is another story, as well as the others who remain unnamed at this time. Now, one of the controversies about using this app is that it was being used on his personal cell phone and not official government's phones. This app is considered to be encrypted and pretty safe, but it has been hacked before, and so there are questions about its reliability in remaining encrypted and safe. Some have claimed that this app was used in the Pentagon by the previous administration, by the Biden administration, and that's why it's being used now. But it still doesn't really make sense why you would have this kind of information on this app um, on personal phones. It seems like when you're discussing attacks or military attacks on a military target, especially before the attacks happen, and you're giving some details as to the times, locations, and methods that will be used, you really only want to use the secure channels that the Pentagon already has. So he got in some trouble for this, and obviously the media was making a firestorm of it, saying, "Oh, look at he's doing it again," and that's kind of incorrect for two reasons. One, this is about that same incident, and although it is a different chat, it was the same thing, or it still happened a few weeks ago. So it wasn't a second occurrence that we could really point to and say, "Hey, he's done it again." And second, or third, or fourth, whatever we're up to now, the first time that this came out, it was because Tim Waltz had created a group. Now, Pete Hegseth was in that group, but this is Hegseth's group that did not include Tim Waltz. So, yeah, it's kind of the same story, regurgitated over again. Just that it gets a little weird because it's Hegseth. He's got to put his own little weird spin on it. Well, let's just talk about the fallout first. So, he fired two officials that had been working with him for over 10 years. So these are loyal guys that he should know well and should be able to be and should be trusted. These are Senior Advisor Dan Caldwell and Deputy Chief of Staff Darren Selnick. They were ostensibly fired for leaking this information about the Signal app to the press, and that they were, consequently working against Hegseth and what he was trying to accomplish at the Pentagon. This is the official line. However, that doesn't really line up, especially because uh, both reported uh, that up until the point that they were fired, they still had security clearances in place. So, if there really was a reason to fire them, that they were suspected of leaks, their security clearance would have been taken away immediately. Now, this falls in line with what an unnamed source has told the New York Post. Uh, this unnamed source says that Joe Casper, the chief of staff, used Selnick and Caldwell as a scapegoat. That Casper was dropping balls, that he was an ineffective manager. And so, what he did during this turf war with Selnick and Caldwell was he called for an investigation into the leak of the information about the Signal app. Then he used this leak to have them dismissed. Again, this is an unnamed source and this is unconfirmed information, but it does make a little bit more sense to have Casper, create this investigation into this leak and then take out his two main rivals. Since then, or I should say the same day that Caldwell and Selnick were fired, Casper became an SGE, which is a special government employee at the Pentagon and is no longer the chief of staff to Secretary of Defense Hegseth. I don't know what a special government employee is. I've never heard of this before, and so I'm going to be looking into this, trying to figure out what exactly this means and what exactly the role is. It is a little shady. Your chief of staff, you fired your two main rivals over a leak about a discussion that shouldn't have happened, and then you get whisked away to some other department with no real name as far as we can tell. I don't know what to make of that. Uh, because not that the New York Post is untrustworthy, but they're not the most trustworthy of sources. And again, an unnamed source, talking about a turf war going on inside of the Pentagon, and that this actually had nothing to do with Selnick and Caldwell actually being leakers, and that they were actually just rivals of Hegseth's, and that's why they were let go, or rivals of Casper's. But this begs the question then, who is Casper to Hegseth? If Casper can tell Hegseth, hey, the two guys that you've known for the past 10 years have got to go, and he says, okay, what's the relationship with Casper then? That's something that I would like to know that I haven't really seen in the media and haven't really been able to uncover. We'll be looking into that too. Uh, but the weirdest part is Hegseth's wife, Jennifer. She is not a DoD employee. She doesn't have experience in the military or in defense, not as a contractor, not as a consultant. She was a Fox News contributor or editor or something like that. So Pete Hegseth's assertion is that he has his wife with him and keeps her abreast of all these things as a media consultant to him. That in and of itself is not that big of a deal, and that can probably be worked out. But if that's the case, she should probably have an official position, and she should have a security clearance. It hasn't been confirmed whether she has a security clearance or not, which leads me to believe that she doesn't. Now, this becomes a little concerning in a minute, but it started off with Hegseth was including her in his Senate confirmation hearings, and not just in the main hearings themselves, but in the individual meetings with senators. This has never happened before. The candidates don't bring people to sit in with them during their one-on-ones with senators. So that is very strange. That's not something that is normal or has ever been done before, and it raises some questions. Now, some of the senators had complained that this changed the dynamics of these kind of one-on-one interviews, and that might have been his strategy in bringing her in, was to kind of change the questions or the way that the questions would be posed to him, which maybe would make it easier on him, or maybe certain things wouldn't be brought up. One of the senators had mentioned that these allegations of sexual abuse against Hegseth were uncomfortable to talk about in front of his wife. I can understand that. That makes sense to me. Now, whether or not that was actually Hegseth's strategy or just a byproduct of whatever it is he's doing, having his wife there, I don't know. I believe she's also his third spouse. So I don't think it's reasonable to say, well, this is his tried and true trusted confidant for, many years. So this dynamic is quite strange. She's also been in meetings at the Pentagon, and there was a statement, I forget exactly who it was, but this person said, well, she's always welcome at the Pentagon. And that doesn't make sense. Uh, people who know Pentagon workers are not automatically cleared to be there with those workers, especially such a high ranking official as the Secretary of Defense. There's been claims by Pentagon officials that She always left meetings before anything that was classified was talked about. But that's completely a lie because everybody knows that the US government has a problem with overclassification. So she definitely heard materials that are classified. Now, whether or not they not necessarily need to be classified and whether or not the knowledge of them to anyone else would be any kind of threat to the United States' ability to defend itself is clearly up for debate. But the point remains. She was in meetings where they were discussing matters of state, of the defense of the United States, and she shouldn't be there. Next, she was also in a meeting with the UK Defense Secretary, John Haley. So the UK Defense Secretary is the same as our Secretary of Defense. I'm sorry, I don't. Defense Secretary, I don't think is correct. I think it's Defense Minister. Uh, yes, the minister. So anyway, John Healey is the UK equivalent of Pete Hegseth, and Jennifer was there for no apparent reason. There's nothing that she can contribute, and even if she is supposed to be um, consulting on, media aspects, she doesn't need to be at that meeting. He can just brief her on the basic details, on the basics later, and she can advise him. She doesn't need to know the actual details. And of course, Hegseth is lashing out at the media saying, oh, you're treating me unfairly. Oh, you're anti MAGA. Oh, it's just because you hate Trump. Ah, rabble, rabble, rabble. Come on, let's be serious here. Pete, you're a mess. Your department's a mess. It's in chaos. This is bad. You need to resign. You should not have been the Secretary of Defense in the first place. And you're showing exactly why. Uh, Now, we know that every time there's news that someone is going to be leaving Trump world, it's like a 50-50 shot because Tim Walz was supposed to be getting the can and he stayed. And Donald Trump has recently said that he thinks Hegseth's doing a good job. But Donald Trump has also said that about other people that he fired a week later. So it's impossible to tell what's going to happen with Hegseth, whether it's going to be within the next week, the next month, the next year, who knows. And this is just one of the reasons why I don't like when Trump is president is because of the chaos that comes with it. Um, and you're getting all kinds of reports out of the Pentagon. Oh, there's chaos in the Pentagon. Now we know that everybody who is either former Trump world or anti-Trump world is going to say that there's chaos everywhere all the time. Problem is, it's true. There is chaos everywhere all the time in Trump world because decisions change rapidly. And that's not a good thing, especially when you have an organization like the Department of Defense. It needs stability. People need to know what to expect day to day. Now, is Hegseth firing his chief of staff going to change our ability to target the Houthis? No. It's not going to directly affect our warfighting capability, at least not right now. But the uncertainty at the top brings uncertainty down all through the ranks. So a lot of things that could get handled don't get handled because middle management doesn't want to make a decision because they don't know what upper management is going to say in a day, 2 days, or 2 weeks. So this creates bottlenecks and gaps all over the place. And while they may not be major effects on the defense capabilities of the United States, they're definitely not a help. They are certainly a hindrance, definitely not a help. And this is the kind of thing that we need to avoid. So I would like Pete to go and for someone else to take his place because I don't think that this is good for the United States, and I don't think that he should have been there in the first place. Um, it's been 100 days, and we've got a couple scandals already. It's not looking good. So I don't want to editorialize too much and give my opinion too much. But I got to give some commentary here. But so those are the facts. We've got some things to check up on. We'll be getting back to you about that. And once again, thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe.